tuned in to Armchair Expat, a series to help you navigate the many unique challenges of moving abroad. Join me, Shannon Acton, host, curator, and chief bargain huntress at Bargain Homes Abroad, as I interview experts across the globe who offer tips and practical advice as you plan your next move in life. Hello. I'm so excited to bring you this conversation with Damien O'Farrell. We recorded it at the end of 2020 and life got in the way, and I am just now getting around to posting it, which is perfect because it's Italy week at Bargain Homes Abroad. So Damien O'Farrell is a global mobility expert. He helps people relocate to Italy, of all places, and he's lived there since 1988, so he knows a little bit about what's needed as far as building a new life in Italy. I hope you enjoy this conversation. He answers all of our questions about visas and taxes and where to move and renting and buying and everything in between. And it was a really fun conversation. I'm so glad he joined us and I'm so grateful. So enjoy. So I wanted to start off, we gave a little bio in the intro, and I wanted to start off really just kind of hearing from you how you came to be, obviously you're not originally from Italy, how you came to be relocating to Italy and what you do there.
Yeah, I'm originally from Ireland, and Italy, to be honest, was not on my radar of a place to live. But I had a friend at that moment who lived in Rome, who had some personal problems, and I said that I could come for a few weeks to help out. And that turned into 32 years.
Wow.
Okay. And then, because I'm not a person that kind of sits around, I started, learning about what it really took to relocate to Italy. Okay. And so I put together a course, how to live and work successfully in Italy. And I presented it for the first time in 1990. And it celebrates its 30th anniversary this year. Next year, depending on what's happening with this COVID situation, it might be online, it might not be in person. Okay. And from that, my entry into global mobility kind of grew. I was primarily doing corporate relocation, okay, which is very different from individuals that are moving to Italy, okay? Because for corporate people, it's just a step on the ladder, okay? And very often they are irritated by certain aspects of Italy, okay? The individual, on the other hand, they really want to be here, okay? So at least at the beginning, let's say in what I call the honeymoon stage, they love everything about Italy. Okay, and so that's a very different type of relocation, and as I said to you, between both camps, throughout these years, I've overseen over 10,000 relocations into Italy.
Amazing.
So it's and I love the industry because you really get to meet a lot of wonderful people. Most of the time people who are open to other cultures, and so they're like a sponge. They absorb a lot of what you tell them, and that makes it very rewarding.
Do you so of the 10,000, I know a lot of them were corporate relocations, but now that you're working with individuals, where are most of the people relocating from when they come to Italy?
They're moving from all over the world. Even in the corporate relocation, the demographics have changed dramatically in that new markets have opened up. So, for example, right now, I get a lot of requests from India, Southeast Asia. And of course, you still have the people moving from North America. Mm-hmm. A lot of requests from Latin America, obviously, because a lot of people have Italian ancestry. So it's pretty much, it's very mixed, I have to say.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very good to know. So let's get into some questions that we've had from the audience.
Sure.
let's just start with why Italy. Like, what makes Italy so wonderful, and why, and particular why, like, why are you there? Why would anybody want to move there?
Um, every year, even though some people take them with a grain of salt, when they release the lists of countries where people would most like to relocate to, Italy usually makes the top five. Okay.
Yep.
And I think I think we can understand why, because I think the number one favorite cuisine in the world probably is Italian.
Yes.
Okay. Um, Even though Italian companies may not have done it themselves, Italy has also exported the culture of coffee
Mm-hmm.
and has some of the best coffee in the world. The country is, I mean, it's kind of like whoever created the universe said, okay, I'm going to make the most beautiful country in the world and give it everything that's beautiful and beyond. And I think that's Italy. I mean, you will go even to the smallest town in Italy and go into a church and see the most amazing things.
Yeah, it definitely has that romantic appeal, right? It's just
It's amazing. I mean, there are still moments when I'm walking around Rome after all these years, and it can still, it might sound cheesy, but it can still take my breath away.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, and one of the reasons why I really love Italy so much is that for the most part, it's a pretty safe country. Okay. It doesn't have a lot of violent crime.
Mhm.
And I think, if you're ticking the boxes, I think that's a very important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as someone who's looking to relocate, and Italy has been high on my list, and it's a contender, what are some things to consider as far as, um, basically, let's be frank. It's not the easiest place to relocate to, especially for North Americans. Correct?
I think that, there's an expression in Ireland, you probably have it in America too, and we say that if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Mm.
Okay. And I think this is the key to a successful relocation. You've got to plan it.
Mhm.
Okay. If you just get on a plane and come over here, um, I'm not saying that can't work out, but it's going to be fraught with a lot of unnecessary problems.
Right.
Okay. And the first and the most important thing to get under control is the compliance. How are you going to live and possibly work in Italy legally?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
It's highly unadvisable, for people to come here without the proper documentation. Okay. So the first thing is that I look at when I start working with a client or I do a consultation is how can we get you legal? Okay. The easiest way, if you can, is that you get access to an Italian or an EU passport.
Okay.
Okay. And in North America, a lot of people don't know this, but they qualify for an EU passport from some country or another.
And how
I
is that?
mean, well, you have 48 million Americans who say that they are of Irish ancestry.
Mhm.
So if you can, if that goes back to the grandparents, Ireland will give you a passport.
Mm.
Italy probably has one of the most generous citizenship laws in the world, in that there's no limit. So if you can kind of show, even going back to the 1400s up to now, that there hasn't really been a break in the citizenship, you can apply for Italian citizenship.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit more about that. Specifically, because I have a great grandfather that was from the Florence area, and I can prove that he was from there. I've always heard that if it comes from the basically the last would be my grandparents would be I would be
No,
able to get that.
it also could be the great great grandfather. Okay. I
Okay.
mean, this is very case specific and it has to be looked at because you have to see if the ancestor that you're claiming through, if they became naturalized in another country. But there are ways to work around that. I mean, there's the 1948 law that didn't, that up to that point, which it was very misogynistic, it didn't allow Italian women to pass citizenship onto their children,
Right.
believe it or not.
I believe
Okay.
it.
And so lots of people can go that road, okay? And even though this was declared unconstitutional, they still really haven't kind of changed the law. So you have to sue the government. For sure, you're going to win, but you've got to go through this rigmarole, for no reason. So, so there's that. If you can't do that, then there are another few opportunities. Okay.
So let's talk about those.
One person I know did it this way, a client I worked with. She did it through an intercompany transfer.
Okay.
She worked for a year in America with a company, and then she transferred here. And because she's been here now for 5 years, they have the possibility to hire her as a local hire. Okay.
Okay.
One that's very popular is the so-called elective residency visa, which is the retirement visa.
Okay.
And that's for people that have a monthly income from something other than work. Okay. So a rental property, Social Security, something like that. Okay. And that's a visa that will allow you to live here. And now they just changed the law. And so under certain circumstances, they will allow you to change that to a work permit. So you'll also be able to work, which you couldn't do before.
So you still have to have that set income, but you can, in addition to that, you can work. Is that what you're saying?
You would get the visa qualifying for it with this independent income. Then once you got to Italy, then you could apply to have it converted to a work permit. Okay. It's not clear yet how that's going to work, but they have said it's going to be possible.
Right.
Okay. Then highly skilled people. So if you qualify for a position in Italy, which is considered highly skilled, the company can pretty much hire you in a very straightforward manner. Okay.
What's considered highly skilled? Like what kind of occupations would fall under that?
A surgeon,
Okay.
A data analyst,
Okay.
the sort of the new school skills. Okay. Anything to do with IT right now in Italy is very underemployed. Okay. So, and that's another thing that you have to consider too, because if you're coming here and you need to work, you need to see what is in demand at the moment. Okay. And then there's another option, which is called the quota system. And the quota system is basically where the Italian government makes available each year a certain number of work permits. So 5,000 for the hospitality industry, 6,000 for the agricultural industry, and then there's a small portion for self-employed people. And so you can apply for a self-employed visa. It's probably the most challenging to get, but not impossible. I've known people who did get it. And they're basically your options, okay? But you have to start working on that before you get to Italy, because the visa is issued at the Italian consulate that has jurisdiction over where you live.
Okay, that was my one question is, where does that process get started? So it's in your own native country, wherever that is.
Absolutely.
Okay, couple of questions stepping back to a couple of the visa options. The one where you have the qualified income and you're moving kind of as a retiree.
Sure.
What are the income requirements based on that?
That's a great question because there's really no official figure. Okay. It's kind of dealt with very much on a case-by-case basis. There's sort of, for a single person, the average seems to be around $2,800 per month.
Dollars,
Okay.
not euro.
No, I'm talking in dollars.
Okay.
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 For a couple, it's somewhere in and around 3,006. Okay. But I've had cases where they were denied with these figures. Okay. I have a client at the moment in San Francisco who's kind of blocked with the consulate there. They have 4 children, one of which has special needs. They have almost $10,000 per month in income that doesn't come from work. And the consulate are kind of saying, well, we don't know with the 4 children, with the special needs child, if this is going to be enough. And I got to tell you something very important, Shannon. It all depends on A, the consulate, B, who you meet.
Okay. Good to know.
Okay. It's the same in Italy. You know, when you go in to present your application, you really have to be as nice as possible. Okay. They have the power. So demanding certain things or being irritated, that's not going to work.
No,
Okay. So go there. They want another document, you give them another document. It's not a problem.
And how important is it to actually be pretty literate in speaking the Italian language at that point when you're working with the consulate in your own country?
Well, the consulate will work with you in English.
Okay.
But before coming to Italy, if I had my time back, and I knew that I was going to be living in Italy, I would have studied Italian. Okay. Because the first 2 years while I was learning the language were very difficult. And what made it really difficult was the fact of not having the language. Okay. So it takes about 90 hours to complete more or less, I think, a level of each language. So if you don't speak any Italian, I would advise anybody coming here to at least do the first level. So at least you can ask for something to eat in a bar, okay? Or if you fall on the street and you've got a pain in your leg, you can explain where the pain is,
right?
Okay?
Yeah.
And what type of pain it is, because these are the kind of experiences that can dampen your entire relocation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I get that. So another question as far as visas go, and you mentioned the ones that every year there's a small subset of kind of self-employed or entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Do you see that changing kind of in the digital age now, where there's a lot of people that are nomadic and there's a lot of other countries that are kind of adopting more friendly visas for people who work from remote basically and do their own thing? Do you see that changing at all, or is it going to be a little bit slower in the Italian process?
I've had meetings with people in Italy in the immigration part of the government, and I would like to say that it's going to change, but I don't see it changing in the foreseeable future. Other countries, particularly places like Estonia, they are light years ahead when it comes to this type of immigration. Okay. Countries like Spain and Portugal have also introduced programs where if you buy a property of a certain value, you can get a residency permit. Italy doesn't have that.
Oh, it does not? Okay.
No, but having a property in Italy gives you no immigration rights. Okay. They have reduced the amount of money that it takes to qualify for the investor's visa and the startup visa. Okay. So if you've got €500,000, you can apply for the investor's visa. For the startup, it's in and around 100,000. For some businesses, 250,000. But they would obviously be for people that have a certain economic standing.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. And so I was thinking that the golden passport was actually the investment path. So it doesn't apply to property. It only applies to either starting up a business or having. Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about once you have your visa and you're relocating, how does healthcare work in Italy? Like, do you need your own private healthcare, or how does that work?
Um, Contrary to what people think, the healthcare in Italy is not free in the sense that it's funded by taxation. Okay. And it works well for the most part. Okay. But it also depends on where you live.
Okay.
Okay. When you initially come here, you will, part of getting any visa is you have to show that you've got private medical insurance.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Then when you get to Italy, some regions, because the National Health Service in Italy is managed at a regional level,
Okay.
and two regions, Umbria and Veneto, will not allow you to pay into the health system, even if you want to, on a voluntary basis. Okay. Others will, and it's based on your declared income. Okay. If you can, I would advise people to have both. I have both. I have the National Health Service with my local doctor if I need a prescription,
Mhm.
and then I've got private. So
Okay.
if I need to do something faster than what the National Health Service is going to be able to give me, I go privately.
Yeah. And from what I understand, I mean, I think for at least for American citizens, not so much Canadian citizens, the word private healthcare is our costs are astronomical here.
Mhm, mhm.
So I think for the most part, would you say Italy is a little bit more reasonable as far, even if you have private healthcare?
Yeah, I mean, for private healthcare, I pay 1,300 euros a year.
Okay.
Okay. And that covers me for everything.
Wow.
And it covers me also for a complete checkup once a year. So I go to the clinic. They even give me breakfast, and they take me through all the tests, the blood test, the heart, everything.
Wow.
And I think 1,300 euros a year for that is not bad.
No, not at all. Especially when, in the States, that could be, close to 1,300 euros a month for so.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I'm kind of shocked a little bit. I'm like, wow, and where does all that money come from? Because if you've got property taxes and other taxes, that's
Yeah,
a lot of money.
it is. It is. It's crazy. So let's go on to, let's see. So we talked about visas. Let's talk a little bit about actually obtaining the visas and kind of average. I know it's going to vary greatly, but average length of time that kind of securing a particular visa would take.
Um, Again, that's very consulate specific.
Okay.
But once you hand in all the documentation, they give you the green light. Um, I would say 30 days.
Oh, okay. I was thinking like 6 months to a year. So once you
Yeah,
have all that documentation, it's pretty
yeah, it goes pretty fast. Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the consulate.
sure.
And if something is missing, they may not necessarily let you know immediately. And that's what could slow down the process.
Okay. And on average, like what kind of paperwork or documentation is required?
Well, I mean, if you're going for the elective residency visa, which is the retirement visa, obviously you've got to show them your passport, you've got to bring them photos, you've got to show them proof of where this income is coming from.
Mhm.
You've got to show that you have private medical insurance. You have to show them um, a lease contract or somewhere where you're going to be living in Italy. That's so you have to do that before you request the visa. You have to
Yeah.
come to, you have to show them also that you don't have a criminal record. So you've got to get clearance from the FBI.
Right.
And birth certificates, marriage certificates.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes there are challenges when, let's say, one person in the couple took the other person's name, so that doesn't match the birth certificate, it doesn't match the passport. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but that these are all things that can be solved. So
Okay.
it's not an issue.
Okay. So you touched on getting a lease agreement prior to having a visa. So how does that typically work? Because that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but I totally get that you need to show that you're going to have a place to live. So how does
Yeah, I mean, if you're applying for the elective residency visa, okay, in this specific case, they want to see where you're going to be living, okay? So that's normally in the shape of a lease agreement that normally goes beyond a year, okay? They want to see some kind of long-term lease agreement. Or it could be that you own a property in Italy, so the deed of the property, okay? So you will come to Italy and you will start your home search. I really advise people to do this through professionals, and I'm not talking about me necessarily. I'm talking about working with a realtor, okay? Because unless you speak the language fluently, you really know what you're doing. Just renting directly from the landlord might not be the best idea. Okay. It's much better to get a good referral to a serious realtor who will take you through the process. Okay. And from the time you choose the property to the time you get the lease, you're talking 3 to 4 months for a rental. Okay. And
I'm sorry, 3 to 4 months.
Oh, sorry, 3 to 4 weeks. Sorry, my mistake. 3 to 4 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks, you should have the lease signed. Okay. And then you have all the associated costs to that. So the realtor, depending on where they're located in Italy, their commission is between 1 to 2 months or 10 to 18% of the annual rent. Okay. The 2 months tends to be more in the north of Italy, and the 1 month sort of from the center down to the south.
And the
okay.
renter pays that?
Both the owner and the tenant pay that.
Okay. Is that typically, so just out of curiosity, like when you do your rental, what's typical in Italy as far as payment up front, first last deposits, or how does that, you don't pay
Usually the deposit is 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
And you pay the first month's rent.
Okay.
So you have 3 to 4 months upfront expense of the rent, and then you have the realtor's fee. Okay. Which is a month's rent. So if the apartment is 2,000 euros, it's 2,000 euros also to the realtor.
Okay. Good to know. It's a little bit, works a little bit different here. So that's probably good information that a lot of people aren't aware of as far as rental. Go ahead.
Yeah. And just to finish that, I mean, location is everything, like it is in the States. So how much the rent is going to be is going to depend very much on where the property is located.
Right.
I mean, you're probably familiar with these €1 house programs that are doing the rounds on the internet. Okay. I mean, I don't deal with those because, there's no free lunch. Okay. So these properties are in the middle of nowhere normally. They need a lot of work. So unless you are independently wealthy, you like a very quiet, bucolic lifestyle, it might not work out for some people. Okay. And there are conditions attached.
Yes, definitely.
You've got to renovate the property. You've got to do it within a specific amount of time. And then I believe also you can't then resell it for a certain amount of time. But there's going to be almost no resale value because nobody really wants to live there. So there are catches.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing's free, right?
Unfortunately not.
Yeah. So talking about kind of communities, and where are the locations that have the largest kind of expat communities? I know coming to a country, not speaking the language, and kind of assimilation is a little bit of a challenge. Where would you suggest folks go start taking a look at communities for expats? Besides Rome, obviously, that's where you're at. So
I'm in Rome. Yeah. Expats, someone to have an experience, a really they want to really throw themselves into Italian culture.
Yeah.
So they only want to live where there are no other expats. Okay. Others like to be around an expat community. And in places obviously like Rome, Milan, Florence, Lucca in Tuscany in general, because that still has a high attractiveness about it for people. Though Puglia is coming up. A lot of people are now buying property in Puglia, particularly the Germans and the Dutch. And I can understand why, because it's just magnificent. I mean, the water is like the Maldives Islands.
Wow.
I mean, it's just amazing. And I mean, and if you shop around, you can get a 3-bedroom apartment for 60,000-70,000 euros. So it's coming up. So in places like Puglia, Sicily, where they didn't traditionally have, expat communities, they're starting to have expat communities.
Yeah, good. So you touched on buying properties, and a lot of my audience here are really super interested in how that whole process works of buying a property in Italy. So can you kind of walk through that process? And
Sure. That's pretty much similar to the rental in that you want to work with a licensed realtor.
Right.
Okay. Not what I describe as middlemen. Okay. You need to work with a serious realtor, because when you buy a property, there are other professionals that have to be involved, like a notary, the surveyor. But you also need a realtor that knows how to do their due diligence. Okay. Because I didn't work with this person, but they went and tried to do things on their own. And then they discovered that the person who was trying to sell the house was not actually the person who had the permission to sell the house. And so it got very complicated. Okay. It's good to know where you want to buy. Okay. That's why I really encourage sort of look-see trips. Okay. So, if I decided tomorrow I wanted to live in Seattle, I would go there for at least 2 weeks and really try to get to know the city.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Based on, research that I would have done in advance. Okay. And Italy is the same. I mean, where do you want to live? What do you need? Okay. A few years back, a couple from New York City, they lived in downtown New York. They moved to a small town in Calabria because they thought that this was what they wanted. And after 8 months, they were going crazy. Okay. Because it was not what they thought it was going to be like. And they missed the theater, they missed the restaurants. So, when I work with people, I say, well, what do you like about your life now? Okay. And if you're going to buy a property, which really is a major step, you want to make sure that it's in an area or a city that you really want to be in. Okay. Because this is long term.
Yeah.
Okay. And selling it may be easy. It may not be easy.
Right.
But the process, I mean, if you work with a serious realtor, the process is pretty painless.
Okay.
I mean, it's good to bring your own cash because it's going to be almost impossible to get a mortgage. Okay. Because you have no credit history. And Italian banks in general are very conservative about lending money.
Okay.
So if you're going to buy, I mean, it has happened, or I've heard of people that have gotten mortgages through companies in other countries, but normally the rule is bring your own cash.
Okay.
And depending on where the property is located, depends on what is the margin for negotiation. But you really want to be in the hands of a competent person, because you're going to need a surveyor. You have to see that certain things are up to standard, because if they're not, you're going to have to bring them up to standard. That's additional costs.
Yeah.
Again, the realtor here, depending on where they're located, will take 1 to 5% in commission of the price of the house. And then depending on the type of property, you're looking at 4 to 22% of VAT tax on top of the sales price.
Okay.
Then you've got registration costs of the contract. So it all adds up.
Right.
I mean, if you're on a limited budget, then you need to crunch the figures well.
Yeah, because that starts adding up pretty quick as far as how do property taxes in Italy work? Once you have your property, do you, I assume, kind of like anywhere else, you pay an annual property tax?
Yeah, and they're pretty reasonable. And again, that's very location specific. Okay. And when you have a property, you really have to pay your garbage tax. That's very important. Okay.
If you don't, what happens?
They will come and take away your furniture. For this tax, for some reason, they seem to be very serious. Okay. And but it's very reasonable. I mean, even a family of 4, maybe they pay 300 euros a year. So I mean, but that again depends on the area in which you live.
Right.
Utilities, electricity by North American standards is expensive.
Okay.
And gasoline for the car is extremely expensive in comparison to North America. But you see, it all depends on where you live. And one of the things that you really must do before you even think of coming to live in Italy is you need to talk to an accountant.
Yeah.
You have to see what are the repercussions of being an Italian resident.
Right.
Okay. And you might not end up having to pay any tax, but it's good to have that discussion.
Oh yeah, and you definitely need to educate yourself prior to getting in.
Yeah, or you could have unpleasant surprises.
Especially for the Americans among us. Yes, there is no, depending on, most countries in the world are very different than America, where it doesn't matter where you live, you're still going to pay, taxes to the United States government, no matter what. So.
Oh yes, Italy doesn't do that to its citizens, but to its residents, I believe they tax you on your global income. Right. So unless you are able to avail of a double taxation treaty, you might end up paying also taxes in Italy. So it's good to talk to someone about that even before doing the immigration.
Right. Now, is that different from people who hold a long-term visa versus someone who holds a passport or a dual citizenship? Or do you know?
They both would need to speak to the accountant.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes no difference if they're just a long-term resident or they've got dual citizenship.
Okay. Good to know.
Because if they're a dual citizenship, the accountant will go to look at what agreements exist between those two countries. Mm-hmm. And a little bit of bad news for my North American friends is the driver's license. Okay. Because America doesn't have a driver's license. It has a state issued license. Right. And none of those states have an agreement with Italy, which means that after 1 year of becoming a resident, you have to take the test.
Oh no.
And the test is only in Italian.
Of course, yes. Okay, so even more reason to start your Italian lessons now, right?
No, because if you drive on that license after 1 year and they stop you, because they've gotten very tech savvy now. Okay, this is not Italy of the early 90s. For them, it's like you're driving without a license. So it's a serious offense.
Yeah, not good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about buying property, but buying it for either like an Airbnb or agriturismo, something that you want to turn into a business. How does that work?
That's going to work well if the property is in somewhere that people want to go.
Right.
Okay. So if you have a property in front of the Colosseum, you're probably going to do okay. But now, right now, most of those properties are empty,
Right.
okay, because of the COVID
Sure.
situation.
Yeah.
So um, the one area of the market that has not really suffered is the long term for sought after properties.
Okay.
But a lot of landlords who took their properties out of that sector of the market and put them on platforms like Airbnb, they are sitting on empty properties.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's be positive that this all passes,
Yeah.
okay? And we start seeing tourism return. Um, the property will do well if it's in a place where, again, people want to visit, okay? Um, if they want to buy a property and have a sort of an agriturismo, yeah, that can be a little overcrowded market. So you'd want to choose, from a personal point of view, I would say you'd want to choose, you'd need to do a little bit of market research and maybe open up where there's not so many others doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But what are the regulations around starting that? I mean, is it pretty stringent as far as, a non-EU citizen coming in, buying property, and then wanting to do an Airbnb?
No. Again, you've got to work with, I mean, if you're talking about, um, buying a property with a lot of land and having guests and maybe even doing wedding receptions, that gets much more complex because
Right.
you need licenses that cover you for um, that the place meets sanitary standards. But no, it's not complex. I mean, it takes time. You have to work with the right person.
Okay.
Okay. But I mean, Airbnb, that's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Okay. But
An
there are.
Airbnb,
Oh, go ahead.
an Airbnb they have sort of a checklist that they give you, you know, and then based on the feedback that the guests give you, that basically decides whether you stay on the platform or you don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I mean, from the point of view of your nationality, no, that doesn't come into play.
No, but and what about like local? I assume you have to have local licenses even for an Airbnb through the.
No, Airbnb, no.
Oh, okay.
But you'd have to look into the income.
Yes,
Okay.
because you're making it in Italy, so you need to declare that. So, okay.
And even if you're not making it in Italy, that's a gray area, and you would need to discuss it with an accountant.
Right. Okay.
You want to make sure that everything is above board, okay? Um, because once you get under the magnifying glass of the Italian tax authorities, you don't get out from under for 4 to 5 years,
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
So I, I really advise, because people say, well, no one's going to know. Who's going to know? Someone's going to know. Okay. Um, Italy, when I moved here, the things that you could do were just incredible. I mean, people came with no visa. They stayed for a year. They left. They came back. But now, movement is monitored much more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the European Union is getting ready for its system ETIAS, which will launch in 2022.
Okay.
And it's very similar to the online system that you've got for Europeans going to the United States. Okay, ESTA. And so it gives you pre-approval. Okay. And they know when you're coming and they know when you're going. Okay. And if you don't have a visa, you can only stay for 90 days in any 180-day period.
Yeah.
Then you've got to leave.
Right.
And then you can come back again after 90 days have gone by.
Right. And that's important to know because a lot of people think, oh, I have 6 months that I can spend in Italy, but you have to split it, or anywhere within the Schengen, but you have to split it up between the 90 days and the 90 days, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can't be in the Schengen area for more than 30 days in any 180-day period. Okay. So you, it's not that,
30 days or 90 days?
sorry?
Is it 30 days or 90 days?
Oh, sorry, 90 days.
Oh,
90
okay.
days in a 180-day period. My mistake. And then you've got to go for 90 days and then you can come back. But you can't go for the 90 days to another Schengen country.
Right.
You could go to Croatia, maybe. You could go to Ireland because they're not part of Schengen. But I mean, that makes things, well, I mean, they're both very nice countries in their own way. And so you could have a nice experience. But if your goal is to be in Italy, then after 90 days, you need some type of a long-term visa.
Right. Yep. Okay. Makes perfect sense. Okay. So what would you say are the biggest challenges of assimilating into the Italian culture?
Ooh, that's a big one. Um, I don't think the problem is settling into Italy because I think that it's probably one of the easier countries to settle into,
Okay.
especially if you speak the language.
Mhm.
Okay. I think one of the challenges is, and this is what I do particularly when I work with individuals, is I take them through a journey of what is it they want to achieve in Italy. Okay. Where do they see themselves in 5 years' time? Okay. What are their goals in Italy? I mean, if you're coming as you want to retire and you want to sit in the Umbrian or the Tuscan countryside and sit back in your garden and drink red wine with Parmigiano, then that's fine. But if you have big career goals, then we need to look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, if you want to be an actor, you're not going to move to Omaha. Okay. You're going to move to New York City or Los Angeles. And Italy is the same. So
Yeah.
I like to look at the relocation holistically. Okay. I mean, even recently when I did a corporate relocation and they were coming in with an older parent, I said, we need to look at this. We need to know where there are facilities for this person. Okay.
Yeah.
So that if they have a problem in the middle of the night, they know where to go. So relocation is not just that you pack a bag, you get on the plane, you turn up in Italy, and that's that. That's that when you're 23 years old. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
As you get a little bit older, you need to have a plan. Okay. And that's in no way, shape, or form um, to put people off. It's just makes sense.
Right.
I mean, if I look back at my own time in Italy, I would have done certain things very differently at the beginning. Okay. Because I didn't know better. But now we're in this age of the internet. I mean, um, I even have a Facebook group, Ultimate Italy. It's got almost 14,000 members, and there's a lot of resources there. And people can ask questions. When I have time, I go in, I answer the questions myself. And so I think that you can't have enough information.
Yeah.
And you need that look-see trip as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Because vacationing and living are two different things.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
And then you'll have sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
And then you really will have a successful relocation.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, I was talking to an HR recently, and they have a couple, I believe they live in Oklahoma, and it's their first time going on an overseas assignment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the HR, this can be a real success or this could be a real disaster. Okay. We really, because it's their first time. Okay. They're not seasoned relocators. We really need to, give them the support that they need and make sure that they settle in, and this goes very smooth.
Yeah.
And the lady said, yeah, you're right, because this is the first time that they've, I think they had relocated within the US, but that's different.
Very
Okay.
much.
I mean, and even that can present certain challenges, but at least you don't have language issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's just hope that, COVID goes away, we all get a vaccine, and the world opens up and we can actually do those look-see trips very, very soon.
I'm hoping that that's all going to happen in 2021, the early part.
Yeah, let's hope. So tell the audience where they can find you if they want to work with you and learn more about relocating.
They can contact me through my website, which is Damien O'Farrell, 2Rs, 2Ls.com. Or if they want to be part of a community, they can join my Facebook group, Ultimate Italy, where there's a lot of resources, and there are also a lot of other members, so they can ask questions. And it's a nice group of people because it's also got a lot of Italians in the group, and we need Italians, okay, to give us some grounded feedback. And so it's a good group, and I think anybody who's thinking of coming to Italy, they should pop into the group.
Right, absolutely. I'm in that group, and there's a wealth of information, and everyone is so lovely and answers the questions. And yeah, it's a great community to be involved in. And that's Ultimate Italy on Facebook, right?
On Facebook, absolutely.
Okay. Great, awesome. Damien, thank you so much for your time today. You're a wealth of information. You're been a pleasure to talk to, and I know that the audience is going to love all this information you provided today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure, Shannon. Thank you very much. Okay.